Hello and welcome to Jamf Software's presentation, Using Personalized Learning to Drive Student Growth. I'm Dave Saltmarsh, Jamf's Educational Evangelist, and today we're joined by Ray Hawansky, the Assistant Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and Don Otto, the Director of Computer and Network Services, both from the Ridley School Department. We're also joined by Ray Lyons, the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for eSpark Learning. We're going to cover topics related to personalized learning and show how the Ridley School District has made a reality into a concept that many people are still trying to figure out the definition. And at Ridley, they've been able to combine their interests and the Casper Suite with a software company called eSpark to not only make personalized learning happen, but also allow it to be happening on the fly in the classroom with little to no interaction by either the teachers or the technology department. The notion of meeting every student's needs is not necessarily new. Certainly we've seen things from trying to facilitate portfolios to show students' individual learning and their growth, differentiated instruction, really trying to see where students are at and meet their immediate needs. And when someone throws out the term personalized learning, often they don't really get into the depth of what they're trying to resolve, what they're trying to accomplish. Michael Horn says it really well, where we're actually trying to tailor learning to that individual student's particular needs. Mass customize, and I throw in mass because we're often trying to do this at scale. Whether it's a classroom and you're a teacher having 20-something or 30 students, that's a large scale. Or if you're an institution with 100,000 students, you still have the opportunity and responsibility to meet the needs of every student across that district. Meeting the needs of individual students is a reality today. And we have proof to show that it can actually close the academic achievement gap. A dilemma we have is the time and energy it takes for a teacher if they were to try to do that manually and to expand that out to scale in order to be able to meet the needs of the student as quickly as possible. Technology can make this happen, and with Jamf software we can help organizations get content down to students' iPads, whether it be the right app for the right student or books or documents. We can help get that in a timely fashion, easily, and with little effort. The dilemma is we want to get better. We want to help organizations get it right at the moment of the student's needs. And that's the story of what's going on at the Ridley School Department. I'd now like to let Don and Ray from the Ridley School District tell you about their journey and the success they've had. Don and Ray, why don't you go ahead and take it over?
So this is Ray Hawansky from Ridley School District, and just first want to mention that it was it's definitely a top down. It's definitely something that there has to be a vision of somewhere in a position that can set a structure in place so that at the end of that learning structure you can have a personalized learning experience for each of the students. So for us, it really started with our superintendent, Leanne Wenzel, who saw eSpark at a conference and came back and presented to our curriculum team. And Luann Crosby, our director of curriculum and instruction, managed it out of the gate and kind of worked out all the logistics of working through and getting the eSpark up and running. Really key component, though, certainly was fitting into our philosophy as a school district. I know from my standpoint, I would not recommend going down any path that doesn't fit with your core mission as a district, and that is always one of our touch points. In fact, the main touch point as we make decisions. And so, our mission, which is projected here, is to create a caring environment that gives all students, and we take that seriously, all students the opportunity to achieve to their fullest personal and academic potential in order to become productive and responsible citizens. And I'm sure that many districts have a like mission. So then you break that down and you say, well, how are we going to do this? So as we examine the tools that are available to us to deliver on this mission to our students and our community, certainly the personalization of a learning environment for each student is something that we feel responsible to offer, and certainly there are limitations of time and certainly limitations of money in doing that. So part of what we've done is we have I shouldn't say we've been asked by our superintendent to work together, the curriculum team and the IT department, as we try to look at some of these solutions. And we'll get into some more detail as we go along, but in general, it's a constant conversation between the IT department and the curriculum department about how we can offer these personalized learning experiences, but do so in a efficient way. And one of the things that I would say is key in that is certainly that we want to produce a learning environment for students, and we view that as either physical or digital, and they would dovetail with each other. That we don't want to prescribe that from the beginning, but rather allow that to evolve, more organically in the teacher's hands, in conjunction with the tools that we offer. So it's not just a conversation, between us, but also listening to, everyone in the tech department that has their hands, nitty-gritty, and they're working with the details, and that's how we work through our beginning with eSpark and Jamf, and then also the experience of the teachers. So just kind of uniting that whole conversation of saying, what does it take for us to provide these personalized learning experiences for a student from beginning to end in the district? So that would then beg the question, why would we go about personalizing learning? So we would personalize learning primarily, as I said, because it correlates with our mission, but also that in our instructional model that we had offered prior to having eSpark available, reading writing workshop, and part of reading writing workshop is to provide on-level reading materials for students. Well, that creates all kinds of issues for teachers, and that you have to create bins of on-level reading materials. You have to identify them. You have to track them and sort them and manage them, and essentially becoming a librarian in the classroom. And eSpark really is the digital version of that. It certainly is the way that we want reading to occur, on level and with fresh interest and engagement. But there's a lot of physical management when you have that going on in the classroom. And the other issue that it allows us to address is the social equity. If you're simply grouping students, or teaching to the middle for any group, that really you are not truly meeting the needs of all students, whether you're talking about interest or whether you're talking about, difficulty level academically. So that really is fundamentally why we went down the path addressing personalized learning.
Okay, this is Don Otto. I am the Director of Computer Network Services for the school district, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we got started with the iPads. We attended an Apple executive briefing almost 5 years ago now in Reston, Virginia, and we had a team of representatives from our administrative leadership team that were engaged in this trip to Reston. Our superintendent, curriculum directors, assistants, business manager, elementary principal, middle school assistant principals, high school principals. So we had a fair representation of the entire school district in this venture. And after attending that meeting, we kind of set the stake in the ground at that event. And we truly believe that Apple's commitment to education really made our selection of looking at the iPad as the one-to-one device that really fit our mission and model to trying to achieve this personalized learning environment. So we started piloting carts of iPads across different content areas and grade levels across the school district back in the summer of 2012, I believe it was. And after reviewing those the challenges and possibilities, we deployed our full K-12 one-to-one iPad initiative in the summer of 2012. So we were prepared. Every student received an iOS device, an iPad 2, at the start of the 2012-2013 school year. So the eSpark pilot kind of was an evolutionary piece as we were drilling more into the personalized learning component of this, and we started that, I believe it was the 2014-15 school year with a pilot in a couple different grade levels in one of our elementary schools. I believe I can't remember which one it was. It was one or two of the elementaries, but we went through that process and determined how the data was going to show, is this really a wise decision? We really want to see results as well. We don't want to invest all this time and energy into something that's really not going to help our students in the end. So the reason for building this pilot. So the pilot went very well, and then we followed up with a pilot of kindergarten. We wanted to see if that level was going to work as well in the following summer. This year was the first year we fully implemented eSpark in the classroom. And our goal, was to deliver, to use the technology to change the way we deliver personalized learning. As Ray mentioned earlier, bins of books, it's not very efficient. And, with any organization, there's only 180 days a year and so much time in the day to get as much information into the hands of our kids as possible.
Yeah, can I just interject real quick here? The other issue, when you look at, utilizing your resources, I have to say, a colleague of mine, Dana Piketty, was the one that did a lot of work, in the classrooms, physically managing those devices. But truly seeing how you can not just replace what you've been doing, if you think of the SAMR model of using, digital instruction, but not just replace what you were doing with books, but also, improve new capabilities in terms of, getting metrics and so forth on students. But then the other piece that we like to think of is freeing up the human interaction within the classroom. Because we all know that instructors, you get pulled into that management piece and you get pulled into doing things that, in this case, we have found technology can do a little better and a little more efficiently, and free up the teacher to interact with students that are maybe having trouble in certain areas. And those other pieces that, the human element that the technology can't take care of. So really looking at how we can, have these pieces working in conjunction with each other, which, again, goes back to fulfilling our mission. The technology plays a role in helping do something, but it also frees up, and we then look at that availability of the time and energy of the teaching staff to do other things that the technology can't do.
Plus, it does allow that innovation to occur within the classroom as well, with teachers, being able to pursue new direction with use of these tools in the classroom, and the easier you can make it for them, the more likely they are to infuse some of those concepts and ideas into common lessons, during the course of the day. So
for sure, that personalization is true for the teachers as well. That they personalize it as well. How they're going to use it, how they make it work in their classroom. It's certainly personalized.
Our kids have it down. It's usually the adults that have a difficult time transitioning into this new form of personalized learning.
So last thing I'd say about that is that it's really, we think of it more as the teachers and in this case, eSpark, but really what we're trying to do as a district is trying to create a learning environment for the students. That it's not really, just if you think of the locution of it, it's really not a delivery of instruction. It's really creating a learning environment in which the students can, at their own pace and at their own levels, make progress.
And so some of the challenges from a technical perspective is being able to have all this work behind the scenes at the convenience of the teacher so that it's not difficult to use. And as we went down this road, having two different mobile device management platforms engaged really, from our perspective, did not make a whole lot of sense in terms of that management aspect about IT having to get involved in everything and trying to Band-Aid things, make things work that really weren't designed to work a certain way. So there was no way we could deploy and manage separate MDM systems long term. And some of the other, challenges were, even the iTunes account, and we had some help from Apple, and Apple was listening to, I'm sure, a lot of the enterprise customers and educational customers that iTunes account just really aren't going to work very well for this type of app deployment concept.
Yeah. So, yeah.
6-year-olds and 7-year-olds trying to remember,
And that's really, that's where, so to speak, I wouldn't say it got heated, but, the conversation got very interesting and rich between Don and I because, we were sitting here struggling with asking for this digital capacity, of our district. We had these one-to-ones. Now we wanted to say, can you help us manage,
simplify,
and simplify the delivery of content that gets to the right students at the right time, at the right level? We're saying we have this great system, but we have to somehow get our students and our classes into that system. And that's where we were struggling to say, okay, we did it in the classroom, and we did it manually, and we managed everything, and we had some, IT
scale that up.
But then we started saying, boy, to scale that up, how are we going to do this if we're doing that, across schools and across grades? And so that's when, there was certainly some push and pull and figuring out how we were going to use an MDM to do that. So.
Yeah, and that's, and as we continue to pursue other personalized learning options, we have to find efficient solutions because, the curriculum people don't have time to continue to do all these professional development opportunities. We don't have the time or resources to handle all the technical aspects of things. So we need to get smarter with the resources we have and the relationships we can get created through certain organizations to help us achieve this goal of personalized learning or streamlining personalized learning.
Yeah, and I think this will come up later again, but we have lots of conversations here about just the fact that we need to connect internally, but we also need to help externally. External companies, external systems, you can see from your own point of view, you can say, boy, if this system here could only coordinate with this system over here, because these guys, company A does, this really well, and company B does this really well. If only
bring all the skills together and get it done the right way.
Yeah, and we have to do the same thing here. So this is just an example of that happening.
So we'll hand it over to, I guess, Ray.
Okay, Ray Lyons from eSpark.
Yes. Thanks, Ray and Don. I appreciate it.
Whoops, there we go.
Great. So as Ray and Don had mentioned, Ridley had approached eSpark for a pilot, and as we worked together with the school district, we learned that they loved eSpark and they also loved the Casper Suite. So they challenged us to work together as two companies to find a way to get the solution integrated into one seamless solution for tech teams and for teachers and for students. So what we're looking at when we're bridging the two companies together is on the eSpark side, we're really individualizing technology for students and teachers, and that incorporates getting the correct apps to the right students at the right time, as well as finding a way to measure the outcomes from this learning and find a way to really tie ROI to the technology investment and technology infrastructure. And then on the Jamf side, it's really leveraging the core strength of the Casper Suite, which is monitoring device inventory, monitoring the content on the devices, as well as all the other pieces of the Casper Suite, which allow tech teams to tie into all their infrastructure and back-end systems like Active Directory, as well as really making sure that their systems are talking together in an efficient manner. So it was brought upon us to work together, and over the last about 2 years now, eSpark has worked hand in hand with Jamf, with our engineering and product teams to build an integrated solution which allows tech teams to essentially use the Casper Suite as they do today and really have no manual day-to-day work required to get the eSpark integration up and running. So the way it works is that eSpark ties into the back-end APIs of the Casper Suite and automatically installs and revokes and reuses VPP licenses to make sure that every student has a specific suite of apps that they need for their day or week activities. What that basically looks like is that we're doing API calls for scoping apps via device assignment. So we're using all the latest, iOS 9 plus features that don't require Apple IDs to install apps to wirelessly bring the apps down. The students will use those apps for the time needed. And then when the students are done with those apps, the Casper Suite will automatically revoke them, put those licenses back into the VPP license pool so that districts are able to really share licenses across many students. And just to give you a flavor of the scale of this, an average eSpark student will use anywhere between about 75 and 100 unique iOS apps throughout a school year. And that means essentially that every couple of weeks, there's anywhere between 5 and about 15 different apps being pushed down to those devices. And we do it in a way so that we're doing it off of hours and preserving bandwidth during the school day. And I think most importantly, we're doing it in a way that doesn't require technology departments and technology teams to do any extra work to their day-to-day process. So this is happening, like I said, silently in the back end and requires no manual intervention. And to give you a snapshot of what it actually looks like on a student's device, we have a quick 2-minute video here. So we have an iPad that a student has in their hands, and it's enrolled in a JSS. And once the integration is turned on, the eSpark app will be wirelessly pushed down to the iPad. The student then logs in with their eSpark username and password and checks in with the mood that they're feeling right now. So the student's excited. The student will then choose whether or not they want to work on math or reading for the day. And then they enter what we call their eSpark Quest, which is a series of curated videos and apps that our learning design team has curated over the years. And it gives the students the opportunity to learn a specific standard that's aligned to their state standards. The apps that each quest requires are given specific instructions. And then most importantly, the integration gives the Casper Suite instructions to install those apps before the student actually needs them. So we're not requiring real-time installs. But the students will go ahead, play those third-party apps, and then when they come back to eSpark, we actually ask them to rate the apps because we care a lot about student engagement. When the eSpark Quest is completed, we have the students record what we call a synthesis video, which is the students reteaching to the iPad what they just learned on their quest. We think this is a magical way. It really takes above the line in the SAMR model, if you will, by redefining what you could do with technology. And these synthesis videos are created about every 2 weeks. So it builds a really nice digital portfolio for each student, and it allows the students to show what they learned in a much richer way besides just a multiple choice assessment. And then, like I said, after the quest is complete, the apps that the quest required are pulled off of the device silently, and a new set of apps are pushed down. And then that goes on and on for the school year. On average, a student will complete about 3 full Common Core domains in one school year. And then finally, in addition to the technology and the software, eSpark also offers support throughout the process. So this includes not only implementation support and professional development support, but ongoing 24/7 teacher support. So if teachers need help, they can email eSpark, call eSpark, reach a real human very easily, as well as teacher alerts, which is basically a way that we push information to teachers on a weekly basis, giving them an update on how their students are doing on eSpark and allowing them to monitor usage in a push fashion as opposed to relying on teachers checking their dashboard. And with that, the last thing I'd say is at eSpark, we care a lot about student outcomes and measuring our impact for these students' lives above and beyond what they're doing in the classroom. And we're really proud with all of our district partners that we work with that we like to tie student achievement outcomes and results to their eSparking experience. And Ridley is no exception to that. And I'd like to have Ray and Don walk through their achievement results from working with eSpark.
Our mission. And that was a very amazing process that not only we experienced, but my tech team, was pretty impressed that we could get two companies to kind of agree and work together to make this come to fruition. We rolled this one-to-one out with the eSpark. Like I said, we've been well into a year of results now with the content, and eSpark really has the content and assessment management skill set. Jamf really had the app delivery and device management skill set. Put those two together, and you're really set up with a great solution that helps drive our mission.
Yeah, and not that there weren't growing pains as we went through that in the beginning, but wow, what a difference now. I mean, we're reaping the benefits. Now we reap the benefits. Yeah, now it's a well-oiled machine at this point, I'd have to say. You know, we have very little tech support out in the even at the building level with where this lives at. I mean, it just works in the classroom. Occasionally we get kids' iPads fill up and we have those technical issues, but they're basically minimal problems at this point. Yes. Of the game. Not more on that one, but and then certainly, when you look at, the budget in terms of scalability, quite frankly, the way this is designed, you really couldn't deliver the same level of personalized instruction without this partnership and without this, connection of, departments and companies. It just wasn't doable at this scale before. Just the HR component alone, we could have never done it with because we would have needed IT staff, additional IT staff, and in this day when we'd rather hire a teacher than a IT person. I think it's probably the argument from an educational standpoint, reducing class size, but that's definitely an element of the of this cooperation as well. Agreed. And when you can facilitate the personalization of instruction to the point where instructors find it easier to provide this kind of learning experience for students than one that is kind of the same for everybody, then that's a win, because then you're going to have this occurring more in the classroom. So we did then look at academic growth results.
I was going to ask you, gentlemen, if you could just touch on that last element, because I've seen a question come through already, and I think you're on it. They're asking, that cost savings budget. They're wondering about the apps and how the third-party apps work. And I think eSpark mentioned already, but if you could touch on how perhaps you're not having to, curate, buy the apps yourself, and are you saving on the actual purchase of your apps? Yeah, we basically have a small budget for apps that we use our VPP connector into Casper directly, and those purchases are made. We use the volume discount models if you get more than 20 copies. There's a lot of the apps that are pushed out or used in the Quest many of them are free as well, so that helps with keeping the app cost down. And as we scale up, as you mentioned earlier, Ray, we'll be able to push these out. It's like a library. There's so many copies in the library, and at any one moment in time, not all the kids are going to be on the same Quest, because it is truly a personalized learning experience. So, depending on the different, where the kids are, those apps can be reused or recycled on demand. So that's where we see most of the cost savings in terms of the app purchase, the procurement of apps. Yeah. So if you think of it just even across a couple of different schools, what we had before in terms of having book bins in classes, that book might be sitting there
unread in one classroom but needed by a student in another classroom. Well, now, because they're all connected into that same library, eSpark manages that and can distribute them when and where they're needed by the different students. And, you don't have to buy any more than you need across all your classrooms and across, all the buildings that you're using them in. So that's where you certainly get a savings on that end. And then even, like we were saying, just to support, the actual delivery of these kinds of experiences. We were struggling with just a classroom, managing the technology, the procurement of the apps and the distribution and, getting, new kids come in, a kid leaves. All those things are now, quite honestly,
they're streamlined.
They're not a thought to us anymore. I mean, we just, it's a faded memory for us. And, it was at the top. And so the way we would think about it is, like, that was at the top of our to-do list on a regular basis, those management issues, and they just aren't there for us now. So when you think about, the cost benefit, it's not just, I mean, part of it is bottom line, you certainly can calculate that, but it's also, what are you actually spending your time doing? And then the analogy would be, when you go, if you have a copy machine, a copy machine that works, so you can go and you can push a button and you get the copies you need for a class and you go back and you use them in your classroom. Well, we know that, if you have a copy machine, you have to get in and you have to dig out and, it keeps getting stuck and, you have to change the toner. All these things have to change all the time. You're spending your time not instructing. So the way that it's happening now, since we have...
It's like a library. It's like libraries in school. Go check the resource out and then return it when you're done.
Yeah, and even better than a library because you don't have to go there.
You don't have to go there. It's physically delivered to you.
And the librarian knows about you, knows who you are, what you need, and actually has it sitting there waiting for you, on your desk when you're going to go do your work.
Libraries are changing, I guess.
So we look at it. It really allows the educators to spend their time doing what they're being paid to do, what they're good at. So we really think of this as really setting things up so that you allow people to function in their area of expertise and to leverage, the expertise of others.
Yeah.
So if you looked at the results,
it's all about the results, right?
It's all about the results, all about that bottom line. So we certainly saw, a significant difference here between those students that we had on our eSpark and the non-eSparkers. We can see in a little less than half a year, we saw a three-quarter grade improvement in their reading levels, and you see that happening at about a third of the rate faster for the eSparkers than the non-eSparkers. I mean, the data here really speaks for itself. And what we, before we even saw this, and I think lots of those folks, when you think about education, before we even saw this, we had we made a prediction after being in the rooms and after we kind of were working through the kinks of the technology that we would see something like this because we saw the engagement. It was painfully obvious when you went into these classrooms and you saw what was happening, and it's quiet, and kids are engaged, and what you hear is only questions about, how to get to what they need to get to, and really they were minimal. Kids knew routines, they had routines, they knew just what to do, and what the teacher was doing was, just kind of looking at those areas of intervention where, they needed to provide a little more support, a little more encouragement. But by and large, those kids are engaged when you go into these classrooms. And, you hear that all along from the teachers to the principals. The two principals involved here, Brenda Sweeney and Jeff Durazio, would say likewise. It's just a stark improvement when you think about some of the ways that we tried to do similar things with technology, when you see this engagement. And not just true, for, the outliers, but really it's the norm. It's what you see and across the teachers and across the classrooms, across
Different
the
personalities,
buildings.
yeah, it's amazing.
And certainly implemented a little differently, but the results, the engagement and the results certainly similar. So again, and this would show that some of the concern for some of the teachers was that you would have, okay, maybe this would work for the younger certain grade levels. And so this pretty clearly shows not true. This is really, you get those results across the board. That both all our third, fourth, and fifth graders are showing some very positive growth using these tools. And again, in the beginning, some had more issues than others. At some of these grade levels, the issues aren't all the same, but they worked out. And again, at the end of the day, you got the results.
Yeah. And at that infancy point, we had the tech support resources on hand to help get through some of those initial hurdles and work to a point where they started feeling more confident in that delivery model in the classroom and working with it. So definitely was a full-blown, everybody threw their hands in and feet into the game and contributed to making this a positive experience for our kids.
For sure.
So, again, this is one of our JAMF administrators, Tracy DeLossi. She works for me, and she was integral in working with the back-end stuff with JAMF and working with eSpark and the engineers at both organizations to kind of make sure she understood what was happening. But it's good to know also that my folks are also so engaged and they understand the relevance of these personalized learning tools for our students and how it's going to help with student achievement. So it's another kind of value add. A lot of times our technical folks, are in the back room, they want to control everything and not allow this or not allow that. We're trying to break those barriers down because it's exactly what they are. They're barriers. And in this business, we really shouldn't encourage those barriers to be in place because we're all working towards that common mission with our kids and engaging our IT folks in this process and understanding the values, of the classroom experience. I think is benchmark stuff that we got to continue to foster and work on the communication between the teams. And I think we're doing a very good job at that right now as well.
Yeah, and I know I've learned a lot from our partnership, but I think we pretty confidently say Don would not have said that 5 years ago. Certainly even 5
years ago, I wouldn't have.
For sure. But bottom line is, we can have all the conversations you want, but without somebody like Tracy and listening to what is actually, what's actually happening, and that conversation that she had with JAMF and eSpark, and that dialogue, none of this would actually happen.
Yeah.
She's definitely a linchpin in the whole operation.
Well, with Sheila, who's also part of Sheila Glenn's our other JAMF, resident JAMF expert as well.
Yeah, they actually make it happen.
And keep things happening.
Well, thank you, Dawn and Ray. I really appreciate you telling your story. I have to admit, when I first met Tracy, I was so excited. I had a great conversation with her, and little did I know that she also got in touch with our CEO, Dean Hager, and of course I couldn't have planned that any better. It was absolutely fantastic to have her tell the story directly to him. The overall success that you've had has been a testament. Certainly we hear a lot of schools who are implementing some projects and they're all excited in the very beginning and they want to tell how great things are going. But quite frankly, a story like yours that has several years behind it to tell that success has a much greater value to others to share. The other aspect that I think we should recognize in the way you were able to close that achievement gap is how you came together as a technology department and an academic section or group, and how you bridged that sometimes seen siloed approach we see in other organizations. So I absolutely applaud that you've done that, and at the same time I would hope that the abilities that the Casper Suite and eSpark has helped you in that way, because we are at our levels hoping to accomplish that same thing. If there's more information desired by anybody out there, you can go to eSpark to find information. You can go to the Casper Suite. We also have other webinars if you're interested in other areas related to the Casper Suite. Thank you very much, absolutely, to our panelists. It's been terrific to actually hear the story presented. And Ray Lyons from eSpark, thank you for your partnership. It's these kinds of things that really extend that Apple platform, and that what Jamf really is all about. It's about that and combining the great Apple products and ecosystem and other apps to solve the dilemmas that schools are challenged with on a day-to-day basis. So thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who joined us, and we will now take a few questions.
With one-to-one, is it pre-K through 12, or what grade levels? And then what grade levels are using eSpark?
Okay, basically the one-to-one is K through 12, so every kindergarten through 12th grader has an iPad, an iOS iPad Air device, 16-gig device. We're currently using eSpark in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades at two of our Title I buildings, which we're focusing the energy on. At least this school year, and we potentially could be looking at other school buildings. We have 7 elementary schools. 2 of them are Title I buildings. So that's been the key focus for at least this year. Okay,
yeah.
much.
And I'll throw this to you, gentlemen, since you're on. I got a couple here for Ray. Someone's asking, what's the advantage to a district that already uses eSpark to using, it says eSpark's MDM, but I think they're implying to use the Casper Suite with eSpark. And I think you might have that best response, since you're the ones who decided to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So we're using it with eSpark. Dave, I'm not sure if they want to. It's another MDM you're saying that they're working with.
I'm sorry. You could be using, and this was a question someone was asking about. eSpark provides Orchard to get people up and running, to get them started as that entry-level MDM. Why go ahead and not use that and also do this combination with the Casper?
You're hitting me in a sore spot. I refuse to use 2 different mobile device management platforms. We had some pretty heated conversations between the curriculum team and our department that we had to come up with a solution, because there was no way to physically manage 6,000 iPads when 500 of them are on one system called Orchard that's managed separately. The information, the feature set that they didn't quite have all the features that the Jamf system, the Casper Suite had. There was no way we were going to be able to balance that and manage 2 separate systems long term. It's just inefficient. It's simple to see that. And that's what convinced us that we need to kind of open the dialogue tables between 2 companies, which is what led us down that path.
Yeah, I mean, when you go all the way from the purchasing, when you look at the purchasing of the apps, the VPP, and all those arrangements, how you make that, and to the integration with, as the classrooms change.
How DEP works with Apple, and if a device gets stolen, well, are they an eSpark kid? Well, if they're an eSpark kid, you got to log on to the Orchard MDM to gain insight on the device. And there was many features that were not available, that were available on the Jamf, because that's the expertise. The MDM company, Casper provided the feature set we needed from an IT perspective, and actually as well as being able to have API interfaces to be able to connect external systems to it for other partnerships down the road as well. So it's not just using the MDM just for eSpark, but the door's open now to do other collaborative efforts with other publishers on the internet that we're currently doing business with that support API or LTI integration services. So
yeah, and we all struggle with students coming in and enrolling late and leaving the district on a rolling basis, and this just kind of made all that seamless really go away. All that managed behind the scenes is just integrated to how we're already managing all those devices. So
why add another layer of complexity onto it?
it really, truly has made this a non-issue, and this is really what we were looking for at this point of, the project. What we're doing here is to say, okay, it's just integrated into how we do things, and we don't need any additional staff. We don't have, anybody, making calls trying to figure out, where's this kid? Why do we have this situation in this classroom? Which is how it was before we had the integration.
When we started piloting it, yeah.
Great. And I think that you hit it for me. Some of it's about scale, and then it's certain specific things that your IT department wants to be able to do that may or may not be able to be the functions in the orchard. And Ray, if you could talk a little bit, we've had some people asking, how are the apps curated? They didn't quite understand the relationship with the third-party apps and eSpark. And I'll go ahead and just, I know you can speak to that. And there's also the concept about what you provide for training, professional development.
Sure. Two good questions. So, we didn't get a chance to touch on the curation piece, but needless to say, we take curation of the apps very seriously. It's essentially one of the core components of what makes eSpark a company. We have an entire team of curators, learning designers who are former teachers with expertise in a specific grade level or subject area, such as, early grades math or later grades ELA, special education, etc. And those folks spend their days downloading every single new educational app they can get their hands on in the App Store, and then evaluating those apps across a specific rubric that we've built up over the years. So we've learned a lot over the last 5 years of curating iOS apps for K-8 students, and our rubric is based on a bunch of different things around vetting apps, making sure that they're age appropriate, making sure that they don't have any in-app purchases or advertising, making sure that there's no typos in apps that are good for ELA, for instance. That's a deal breaker for us. And also making sure that the apps don't take up too much space on the iPad necessarily, or aren't overly expensive. We have a mix of free and paid apps, and if we are going to ask a district to pay for a third-party app, we want to make sure that they're getting a good bang for their buck. So in terms of the actual curation process, be happy to take that offline, but we go very, very deep with our rubric, and we actually incorporate the student voice into our curation. On the video that we showed, after students play the third-party apps, they come back into eSpark. We ask them to give the app a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and the purpose of that is to inform the student voice in our curation process. So we want to make sure that students are really engaged with these apps, and if we curate an app that gets a significant amount of thumbs down, we'll go ahead and yank that from our curriculum and put a new app in there that will get a higher engagement rating. So all of our apps are third-party iOS apps, so which means that we don't create these apps ourselves. We're just leveraging the strength of Apple's amazing iOS ecosystem. That the app catalog evolves over time to capture the latest and greatest apps that are out there. And you may ask, so then how does a district pay for these different third-party apps? We essentially estimate how much money you will need in your VPP budget for the school year, given the grades that your students are working at, as well as the amount of time that they're using eSpark for. We recommend eSpark anywhere between about 60 to 90 minutes a week. So that could look like, 3 days a week for about 20 minutes per session. And based on the usage and the grade levels, we'll estimate anywhere between about $8 per student per year on the low end, up to about $15 per student per year on the high end, to essentially establish your VPP app catalog. And then in the following years, that number falls off precipitously because of the revoking and sharing. So in the following years, it's about 30% of those numbers there. In terms of the professional development, we offer a range of professional development options, from virtual training and virtual coaching on the low end to in-person coaching and in-person mentoring on the higher end. We like to customize our professional development offering to the district's needs. So some districts are just getting started with iPads and need things like iPad 101 and different classroom management techniques. We'll include that. We also work with districts like Ridley, who had iPads for a number of years, had established some norms, didn't necessarily need iPad 101 per se, but needed some more higher level professional development to get their teachers to the next level in their classrooms, and that's what we were able to offer Ridley. So the professional development, like I said, ranges from lower touch, less expensive, to higher touch, more in person, at a higher cost.
Great. And I'm going to take an easy one, let you catch your breath, and give you another good one. So I know, and especially from what you just said, the whole power of this is because you're taking advantage of the iOS ecosystem and the hundreds of thousands of apps, and it's specifically for iPad, which is Jamf is Apple and only, and so we're supporting that. But you're supporting this because you're curating all of those apps. You don't work on Chromebooks, and that's why. So that's an easy question for me. The one that might go in a little bit more for you is you mentioned a little bit about the skills. I think they're looking at, if you're using third-party apps, how are you assessing and determining the students ready to move on? I think somebody's interested in the assessment piece of what you use to determine a student's need and then their ability to progress. I'll just leave it at that one.
Yeah, that's great. So part of the magic of eSpark is that we're giving students the content they need that's at their level. So the question is, well, how do you know what their level is? And the answer there is that we'll use your district's existing assessment data that's sitting on the shelf from some hard-fought testing that I'm sure most of you are going through right now. And the idea here is that we want to use your existing assessment data and feed that into our system to understand where each student is at. So that could look like NWEA's MAP assessment. It could look like STAR Renaissance Learning STAR 360 assessment. Let's Go Learn, for instance, is what Ridley uses. Or if you have a state assessment or a district customized assessment, we can take that as input as well to understand where each student needs to be. And that's really to establish a baseline at the beginning of the year as to where each student should start. And then the question is how do you know a student has mastered a standard, and how do you know if that student is able to move on to their next quest or the next standard? And the way that we do that is through a very brief post-quiz at the end of each quest. It's a 5 to 10 question multiple choice post-quiz wherein the student needs to show mastery of 80% or higher. So if they get an 80% or higher on that post-quiz, they've showed mastery of that specific standard. They get rewarded by needing to create this synthesis video where they reteach what they just learned, and then they move on to the next standard in the sequence that we've sequenced for that given standard or for that given domain. And the reason that we like to focus on the third-party external assessments is because we believe that it shouldn't be up to eSpark to tell you that your kids are growing. We want to use the district's external third-party assessments that they typically use, such as NWEA, MAP, or STAR Renaissance, to really assess the growth of the students and not just take eSpark's word for it.
Terrific, great, thanks. And there was a question directed to Jamf sort of about the apps, and you already covered, Ray from eSpark covered how they vet the apps and determine to get them they're aligned to standards. The other apps within the district, that's where the Casper Suite comes into play with outside of being used by eSpark to be deployed down to students. And that really is individualized at the school level, and each school has their policies and their procedures. And the Casper Suite just enables that ability to do it wirelessly at the moment of purchase and very easily to retain those apps. But the decision making of which ones to buy really go back into the district. Ray at eSpark, having junior high students that are well below grade level, and will the eSpark solution support that?
I'm sorry, Dave. You broke up there just a little bit, but I think the question was what about students that are in the older grades that are needing content at a lower grade level? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes. So we do have many district partners that do use eSpark in that manner. When we are curating our apps, we are taking into account the age appropriateness of those apps. And what we try to do is make sure that they are age appropriate for the students that need them. In the case where you have junior high students, we find that the bigger challenge is actually the instructional model that those students will use eSpark in terms of finding a differentiated block of the day to use eSpark rather than the content itself. So the junior high students that use eSpark today are engaged with it and do see very significant growth. It's, I think, more of a question of, given a typical middle school classroom schedule, how do you fit that into your day in a seamless way?
Great, thank you. And at that, we're about out of time. If you want to hear about some customer stories in your area, what schools are using eSpark and or using the Casper Suite in conjunction, we'd be happy to follow up with you offline on this and absolutely take any other further questions. So Ray from eSpark, thank you very much. Don and Ray from Ridley, I really appreciate you telling us your story, and thank everyone for joining today.